You were mentioning you said if you had the CDFA training prior to doing your own divorce, you wouldn't have made so many mistakes or made mistakes. Without
Mhm.
divulging your mistakes, what are some
Sure.
of the things or mistakes that can be made by people?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, and I'm an open book, so I'm happy to share, my situation. There were some negotiations that were done based on alimony, the way we had structured alimony, and there was actually some verbiage that was used in the divorce decree for myself that impacted my ability to actually deduct the tax. I'm sorry, the tax
Yeah.
deductibility of my alimony. And we just settled this with believe it or not, I mean, we had for 2 years I had to go back and forth with the IRS just to get this one word in the divorce decree adjusted. We actually had to go back to the courts, and luckily my ex-wife had agreed to making the adjustment to the verbiage in there. And then we simply said, okay, like here's what we meant by using this word.
Mhm.
And they as backwards as the IRS is in most cases, they were able to decipher what we were trying to do, and they allowed me to deduct the alimony. But that was attorney cost, that was a bunch of time, energy, and effort, a
Sure.
lot of stress that was involved in it, and so on. But just knowing the having the information that I have now that I didn't have then, there are other things like the division of retirement assets and the marital home and things of that nature. You have to take into consideration the taxation that's involved. Where in one case, I'll use an example of a client case that I have. There was a discussion between keeping the marital home or keeping the 401k as part of the settlement. And in this case, the husband was going to keep the house because he enjoyed it. The kids were still going to be staying with him, and his backyard is his haven, so to speak. And the wife just looked at it at first blush and said, "That's okay. I'll just there's approximately the same amount of value in my retirement account. I'll just keep that." Well, and this happens all the time. When he goes to sell that property later on, he benefits from lower capital gains taxation rates and also tax exclusions, the capital gains exclusions that are involved. So he's going to pay much lower tax, likely over time. Whereas if she decided to keep that agreement in place, fast forward into retirement, now she wants to take money out of her retirement account. She's paying ordinary income tax rates.
Right.
So it's 15% versus 22 or 28%, and maybe even higher, depending on what state she lives in and so on. So there are little things like that can come about with the negotiations that you have to be cognizant of to make sure that it's a fair and equitable arrangement. Because at first blush, it looks like it is, but when you take taxes into consideration, it most certainly is not.
Yeah. And what a lot of people are not aware of that I come across doing what I do is in those similar circumstances, kind of offsetting equities, if you will, some not being liquid, the they particularly if they plan on pulling that money out right away because they need those funds, then they're going to get with, I would imagine, penalties as well.
100%. And a perfect example of that is a pension plan. Now, very, very few people out there have pensions any longer, but some of the older folks that we're seeing that have, not only now in my current life, but even in the past, there are still pensions out there that exist, and that's not something where you can just call up the company and say, the water heater broke, or I need access to this cash because there's some kind of other emergency, or I have to pay my attorney bill or what have you. That money is, first off, you have to figure out what the actual value of that pension is, because it's not worth the same thing today as it will be 5-10 years into the future.
Right.
And then it's not easily accessible. So dealing with the liquid versus illiquid assets is something that we will do as well, and make sure that the settlement is fair as well.
Yeah, it's interesting you distinguish pension from, say, 401k or like deferred comp type plans, because I'll talk to clients who they put it all under one umbrella of a pension system, or they'll say it's a retirement account and it's a 401k versus a traditional pension. And like you're saying, it's with a 401k, you could just say get a statement and see what the balance is, maybe at the date of separation or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But with the pensions, because they're a percentage at retirement and it goes through a calculation and all that, that they're not understanding that, one, that they can just, like you said, call up and get a value, or two, they're making the mistake of looking at the employee contributions and thinking that's the actual dollar value in the plan. I just got off a call yesterday with a gentleman who the divorce was finalized, and in the disclosure forms and on the settlement agreement, the wife prepared. So they did their own divorce. The wife prepared the settlement agreement, and she wrote down 50% of whatever showed on that statement, and it was a true pension system. And when he called me, he said, is she going to get, 75,000? I said, well, no, because it's an actual pension. If it was a 401k, yes. But if it was, it was actual pension system, I think it was either STRS or PERS or one of those. Sure. I said that value was just what your contributions, because he was a sheriff. So it's actually Lacera, now that I remember. But that was just his contributions over the 25 years up until the time of divorce.